Chapter 13 Music Awards Part 2 Part 3 Could everyone hear how loud his heart was beating? There was no way he was the only one who could hear it. For a moment, he had really thought it would beat out of his chest, just skip off away from him and leave him empty. James must have been a better actor than he gave himself credit for. He kept his cool the entire time. He didn't stutter over his words. Well, not much. Okay, he had rambled on a little bit, but it had not been a joke when he said Regulus made him nervous. His only motivation to go on the carpet anymore was the fact that Regulus might be watching him from the other side. His skin flashed between hot and ice cold. Regulus had been incapable of words, but James's throat was tightening with each passing second. He really has no clue how he made it through any of that. His goal had been to casually distract Regulus from the impending doom of the carpet. Just because he didn't have an issue with it did not mean he didn't understand what it was like. Of course, nothing went as planned. He was supposed to keep talking about nonsense, asking Regulus questions to distract him. Instead, James was distracted. Regulus had added more of the gloss to his lips just before they got out of the limo. James wanted to taste it, just a tiny little taste of the pink sparkly gloss, and he would be set for life. James watched him with serious. His eyes were a bit distracted. He seemed to be moving mostly on autopilot, actually. James hoped that meant his plan had worked. Peter patted him on the back rather abruptly, dragging him out of his trance. All right, Prongs? He asked, a teasing look on his face. He cleared his throat. Yes, yes, all right. You sure? Peter said, raising an eyebrow. You seem a bit flushed. How much did you see? James asked. Peter laughed, trying to guide him along to where they were now supposed to join Remus and Sirius on the carpet. I saw enough. The cameras started flashing immediately, hardly giving them a chance to arrange themselves. It always went from left to right James, Sirius, Peter, and then Remus. It was an unconscious thing they did, never really thinking too much about it. It was the most natural, and it didn't accentuate the height difference too much. Well, except for Remus. He was just way taller than all of them anyway, no hiding that. James didn't even have to fake his smile. In fact, it was probably suspiciously genuine. He hoped Regulus was watching. He had told him he was trying to impress him. Sirius looked up at him at some point, genuine concern on his face when he saw James. What the fuck? He asked. The cameras kept taking pictures. James kept smiling. Nothing could bring him down at this point. Prongs, you look like a maniac. I feel like one, he said, perhaps a bit too excitedly. Peter had a knowing look on his face, and Remus looked amused at the contrast between him and Sirius. Sirius, smile for us! One of the photographers yelled, their voice somehow breaking out from the crowd. Probably reserving to ask him about it later, Sirius went back to smiling for the cameras. They still had a job to do, and right now, that was what came first. Regulus and Ava were waiting on the other side of the carpet when they got off. Regulus was avoiding James's eyes, which he considered a good sign, actually. It meant he hadn't been making up everything that he felt back there, and it made James smile even more. His cheeks were starting to hurt. He didn't care. Sirius looked a bit frustrated that nobody would tell him anything after he loudly asked, why is Prong smiling like that? Like what? Like a serial killer, James, Peter told him a bit patronizingly. Can't a man just be happy? He asked with a tiny sigh. Sirius opened his mouth to respond, and then promptly closed it, eyes going a little bit wide at something behind James. Before he could even ask what happened, he heard his name being called from a voice he had not heard in years. Jamie! Oh, shit. Shit. James turned around, his smile much more diluted now as he came face to face with Electa Carroll. She was smiling too, her lips upturned in a way that almost looked evil. So, Alecto might have been James's girlfriend in secondary school, and it ended less than amicably to say the least. James was just always busy with sports and school and his friends. He tended to neglect the fact that he had a girlfriend at all. She was the one who asked him out originally, and James couldn't think of a reason to say no. In hindsight, that was not a good reason to date someone, but he was young and Sirius had already had a couple girlfriends by then. He just thought it was what he was supposed to do. Alecta, he said, reminding himself to be nice. He forgot she came to things like this. She was a music producer, so some of the things she had produced were likely nominated for an award. How have you been? Behind him, he could hear a harsh conversation between Regulus and Sirius. Who's that? Sirius let out a small laugh. Oh, you'll see, Reggie. James was dreading this whole thing now. So much for not bringing him down. Their relationship had been bad on both ends. He sort of forgot she existed at times. She shamed him for never wanting to have sex with her. Toxic was the best way he could think of to describe it. The worst part is, before everything happened, he had actually liked Alecto. Not in a romantic way, he realized now, but she was a good friend to him before they started dating. I've been fantastic. And yourself? James knew this entire conversation was stilled on both of their ends, but she was actually enjoying it, which made it all the worse. Yeah, pretty good, he said. She nodded, humming a little bit. James knew it was coming. He expected it by now. Every time he ran into her, she would ask him the same question. It made him sick to his stomach each and every time. She had no right. So, are you still a virgin, Jamie? She asked, word dripping in sweetness and knives. She kept her voice down, but his friends were right there. They could hear everything. He heard Regulus start coughing behind him, but for once James wasn't really thinking about him. His throat started to close again, this time in a way that made him uncomfortable, and he realized he was trying not to cry. After all these years, she still had this grip on him that he never seemed to be able to shake. James would rebuild himself over and over, and she was still fucking there, always lingering. Sirius stepped forward, eyes sharp. James felt small. Why don't you bother someone else, hmm? She did not react to him, which was a fit in itself. Sirius was scary when he was angry. I will, she said with a small nod of confirmation. After I get all the updates on Jamie here. She tried to reach for his hands, and he jumped back. James had dealt with bullies. He knew how their minds worked, but for some reason, Alecto was his kryptonite. She was beautiful, and she had long dark hair with dark eyes to match. She was beautiful and she was cold. And James started to wonder if he had a type. Was Regulus going to hurt him too? He stopped himself from turning around to look at him. It would just hurt. The people he loved never loved him back. James knew he wasn't good enough. Elector reminded him of it every single time he saw her. It didn't make it hurt any less, though. Leave, Sirius told her. She looked right at James. Jamie? He hated being called that. He hated it because only she called him it. After they broke up, he made his parents stop saying it. He made his little cousins stop saying it. Everyone. Yes, I'm still a virgin, he said. The same thing he said every time. She smiled as if she was happy about it, as if she were pleased to know it. James tended to not feel hatred for people. He liked to give them the benefit of the doubt. But he would be lying if he said Alecto wasn't his least favorite person. James's fake smile dropped completely the moment she left. He hated feeling like this. Couldn't bear it really. Prongs? Sirius said, turning around to look at him. James knew Sirius wanted to hug him, but for once, he was in no mood for it. I need a minute, he told them, practically running away. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he needed to be alone. The bathroom was not empty, but it was the closest to privacy he was going to get. He locked himself in one of the stalls, trying to just breathe. He knew how to breathe. He'd been doing it for 23 years now. He could do it for the next couple of minutes. I'm fine, he promised for probably just 12th time. Why was nobody taking his word for it? Everything was fine. Since he got back and found them at the table, Sirius had been questioning his well being. He didn't need Sirius to worry. He had enough going on. And really, James was fine. He was handling it all on his own, and everything was going to be alright. Dinner had been served already, and somebody had made a plate for him. He could hardly touch it though, and he opted for people watching instead. There were so many people there that James had looked up to forever, and he wanted to get up and go say hi to them, introduce himself. James was always good at pretending he was okay when he really wasn't. He would support his friends through whatever they were going to. He would drop everything he was doing and focus on them. Making his friends happy made him happy. He didn't need much else than that. The actual award show wasn't going to start until after everyone had eaten, although it looked like that was finally coming to a close anyway, since people were going around and cleaning up the tables. Prongs? Sirius said, trying to catch his eye. James smiled, knowing it would be reassuring if Sirius saw him smile. Did you know Sarah Tyler is here somewhere? He asked, all but demanding that they change the topic. He didn't like everyone looking at him like he was fragile. He was fine. Sirius sighed, looking a bit defeated. Yeah, haven't seen her yet though. James shrugged and went back to looking around at everyone. He found people as a general topic to be wholly fascinating, the way they interacted with each other and with their surroundings. If James hadn't gone into music, he has no doubt he would have ended up studying sociology. Some people were standing around a bit awkwardly, and James recognized them as the people who are still new to this whole world. He had been like that once, feeling out of place no matter where he went. Sometimes he still felt like that. He just got better at hiding it. Some people were also very clearly drunk or high on some sort of drug, a common theme in the music industry. James sort of wished he had a little bit more to drink earlier. It would have made the interaction with Electo much more bearable. The noise seemed to slowly start dying down, and the lights got darker for a moment. He knew it meant the show was starting soon, and he was grateful for the distraction. He would have something to pay attention to that wasn't the concerned look on his friends' faces. Really and truly, James was perfectly fine. Rage was not a new feeling for Regulus, not at all. He was used to getting angry, usually at things that were far too small to evoke such a response, but still, the world was an angering place for us frustrating people and situations. Regulus spent years learning it, and now he's just spent years simply knowing it. He knew how to be angry, he even knew what it felt like. This was new. This was rage he had never known before. He had never seen James respond like that, not to anyone and not to anything. He had seen people yell terrible things to him in public. He had watched interviews that were downright disrespectful. And still, James responded above it all, completely unaffected by what anybody else had to say. But this girl comes up to them, and all of a sudden, James is quieter than Regulus had ever seen. He saw the way his whole demeanor changed. Yes, he was avoiding eye contact, but he was still looking. He couldn't help it. He clenched his fist, quite honestly waiting for her to say something that would have excused a swift punch to the face. He liked to think he was above violence, but really, he wasn't. Not when it came to someone who knocked James down so quickly, so easily. And then James left, and he looked sadder than Regulus even thought possible for him. So now he was out for blood. Who the fuck was that? He asked, looking for her in the crowd of people. Alecto Caro, Sirius said, his eyes as blazing as Regulus's. She made him sad, Regulus said, unable to accept it. In the past couple of weeks, he had known him. Regulus had never once seen him anything other than happy, and while that wasn't healthy at all, he still did not want James to be sad. Pets? Remus said, appearing in front of his face. Sirius had been looking for her too. He lifted his head to look at him, still not softening. She can't keep doing this, Remus sighed. He doesn't want us to do anything. So, you promised. I didn't, Regulus said, deciding to pay attention to their conversation now. He never promised James anything about her. In fact, this was the first time he had ever heard of her. Remus looked at him sideways. Since when did you start caring so much about James? He asked. I don't, he insisted. Regulus hates James. He does, right? Sirius started looking at him the exact same way, although he was looking deeper, like he was trying to figure something out. Regulus refused to keep eye contact, afraid Sirius would see something that Regulus was refusing to confront. You do, Sirius said. I don't. Sirius smiled. I knew it would come around eventually. Everybody adores James. Even you can't resist him. I'm resisting, he mumbled, keeping his tone flat. Just because he didn't want James to be upset did not mean he cared. It just meant, well, Regulus didn't actually know what it meant. He just knew he hated James anyway. This did not change that. He was pretty sure she was avoiding them, which was smart. He would simply not accept her even coming near them again. He was out for blood at this point. James came back about 30 minutes later. He was not saying anything about Electa and he was acting like nothing had even happened. He wouldn't tell Sirius where he had even been or what he was doing. He kept insisting he was fine, which was honestly making Regulus want to snap. James made him talk. James gave him space to open up, so why couldn't he let Regulus do the same thing? He didn't really know how to, but that didn't mean he couldn't try. James just he needed to let himself be upset. He probably wouldn't even react if they didn't win the awards, which yeah, he could be happy for whoever won, but he could be sad at the same time, and that was what he needed to realize. Regulus didn't say a word to him though. He kept looking for whoever the fuck that Alecta girl was, waiting for his opportunity to say something, to give her a piece of his mind. Who even cared if James was a virgin? Why was she so obsessed with his sex life? It was borderline psychotic, actually. His business was his business. Remus nudged him, probably harder than he needed to. Cameras are on, he said, his voice sharp. But I know, Remus said. You have to pretend, though, for a couple more hours. He wanted to be angry about it, but he couldn't even show that because now there were cameras on basically the entire night. Regulus knew that the night entailed, and still he had forgotten all about how he was supposed to present himself until that moment. He didn't smile, but he at least pretended he wasn't boiling over with anger every time he looked at James. It was all a show, and it wasn't one that he was interested in watching. Ava, who was a bit confused about all of the drama, held up most of the conversation, quite the contrast to earlier when she had been quiet. What are you guys nominated for again? She asked. Peter was the only one who was even capable of answering her. James was off in his own world, staring at the stage and the people presenting the awards. Sirius kept staring at Remus, both of them sharing concerned looks about James. Best duo group, top album, and top single, Peter said, listing them off. Regulus hadn't even looked at the awards or who else was nominated. Sirius said they probably wouldn't win any of them, and Regulus just took that as it was. But those were some pretty big categories. Basically, the biggest ones there even were. So, well, that meant there was a chance. They didn't nominate just anybody for those categories. What, seriously? He asked. He thought they were maybe nominated for a half award that was so hyper specific. James turned his attention to Regulus, looking at him for the first time since he got back. His eyes were different. That was the first thing Regulus noticed. He had a smile on his face, but it wasn't real. By now, Regulus was pretty confident in his abilities to tell if James's smile was real or not. Impressed? Beyond measure. James hummed, looking back towards the stage as if anything actually interesting was happening. Regulus held back a sigh and turned his attention the same way. He didn't really pay any attention. He clapped when everybody else did, and he smiled whenever he saw a camera coming closer to their table. He was well practiced in knowing when to put on a mask. His ears perked up a little bit when the first of their categories was called Best Duo Group. When he was younger, Regulus used to tease Sirius about being in a boy band. It used to make him so mad, asking Regulus questions like, was Queen a boy band? And Regulus would have to tell him he would never be Queen. Still, what they had accomplished was impressive, and some small brotherly part of him was actually proud that they were even nominated for this. And the winner is. The presenter paused, opening the envelope at what felt like an agonizingly slow pace. None of the guys were even anxious about it, and they had almost identical smiles on their faces, small and humble. The marauders! Everybody erupted into applause, just like they had done for every other winner that was announced. Regulus could not help the look of shock on his face as they all stood up. Remus gave Ava a hug, and Regulus remembered he was supposed to do the same thing to congratulate them. He could only bear giving Sirius a hug, and even then he made sure it was over as quickly as it began, and the four of them were walking up to the stage. They actually won? He asked Ava, unsure if he was imagining it. She smiled. You know, they're actually pretty good. Regulus had seen them live. He knew that was the case, and he knew that this was their year. They had gone global, international even, and were topping every single chart when their album was released. Still, it was a bit surreal to see Sirius up on the stage, accepting an award with his mate from secondary school. Sirius stepped forward to start his speech. Regulus knew enough to know that they were written in advance, but Sirius had never really been one to actually follow a script. Holy shit, he said, causing the crowd to laugh. Wow, honestly, this is just so incredible, and we are so thankful for each and every one of our fans that made our being here possible, he said, a faraway look in his eye while he looked at the camera. To everybody else, he looked like a shining star. To Regulus, he just looked like his older brother. This speech was more shorter because of the category. It wasn't a very important one in the grand scheme of things, although it was still one that people cared about, so they would be airing it live. Regulus clapped again with everyone else when they went backstage. 20 minutes later, they came back to the table. Sirius and Remus both had flushed cheeks. James was the same as he was before the award, still disconnected from reality but pretending to be in the moment. Peter was trying to hide his laugh. Everything was as it should be. And then, eventually, the more important categories started getting called, like top artist or top Billboard 100 song, things to that effect. And the winner for top single of the year is. Another long, exaggerated pause. It was getting a bit old. Did they really need to build suspense every single time? You Get Me So High by the Marauders. This time, Regulus was not the only one who was genuinely surprised. Really, they had only thought they would win the Best Group award, and that was it. So far, 2 out of 3. Sirius took the mic again. He got the in depth thank yous out of the way and started talking about what the song meant to him. Regulus hadn't even known he was the one who wrote it, although it was obvious now. The song was about Remus. So I wrote this song about someone who was very important to me, and well, I was really quite besotted with them actually, Sirius said, blushing a little bit when people in the crowd started cheering for him. The worst part was that they all thought he was talking about a girl. Remus remained impassive though, also an exceptionally good actor. He wondered how many times he had lied to Regulus and gotten away with it. Their ability to lie or twist the truth was unparalleled. Thank you, Sirius said again at the end of his speech. They all returned much quicker the next time around, since the final category they were nominated for was in the next couple of minutes. Regulus leaned forward a little bit. Did you guys rig this? He asked genuinely. Sirius's jaw dropped. Rude? He shrugged, turning back around. He was already bored of being here. Just wanted to go to bed, if he was honest. One last night in the hotel, and then he could go back home to London. Top album of the year goes to the Marauders! Finally. Finally, even James faltered a little bit, his facade cracking as they won their third award of the evening. Oh, you fucking joking, Regulus said, watching as they all stood up a third time. Sirius moved to stand by him, obviously expecting another hug. Regulus tried not to roll his eyes and instead smiled. Cameras were watching their interaction, and Regulus had to be happy for his brother before anything else. This time, it was Remus who took the microphone. Regulus knew what that meant, and he nudged Ava a little bit. Time to act, he told her. Hi, we're the Marauders. We just wanted to thank everyone who had a part in the making of this album. It's a body of work that's so special to each of us and to the fans, who we also want to thank profusely for making this happen. We also want to thank the Potters for giving us a place to practice every day after school and for having the best snacks. I want to thank my beautiful girlfriend, Ava, for being there for me through all of this, he said, gesturing to their table. Ava looked elated, smiling and blowing kisses, blushing at the same time. Yeah, she was a good actor too. Sirius was visibly trying to remain calm, zoned out completely with a frozen smile on his face. Regulus was glad he would never have to deal with something like this. All the jealousy and anger and resentment, it couldn't be healthy, especially for a relationship that still technically isn't official. Sirius leaned over and took the microphone, and Regulus only prayed that he wasn't about to say something stupid. And I want to thank to my brother, Sirius said loudly, pointing directly at Regulus. The tight smile stayed on his face while the camera panned over him. Reggie, you are a legend. Was he drunk? He wasn't paying much attention to how much Sirius was drinking. He wasn't his keeper. But, well, he would have noticed if he had that much, right? He supposed there was waiters carrying around flutes of champagne and refilling glasses as soon as they were even halfway empty. James stepped forward this time. Regulus held his breath. And I would like to thank my ex girlfriend for inspiring so many songs on this album, he said, a fake smile on his face. He was searching for someone in the crowd and he seemed to find her because his eyes locked on the spot that regulars couldn't see, including but not limited to Maniac. Give her a round of applause, everybody. The crowd looked so confused, and there were a couple of people who started slow clapping, unsure of what to do at this point. Peter, in a moment of saving grace, grabbed a mic away from James, said a couple more random and general thank yous, and got all of them off the stage. This was not going to go over well.